From the top, okay? Milkman Dad was born shortly after a neighborhood eccentric hurled himself off a rooftop in a vain attempt at flight. For the rest of his life, he, too, will be trying to fly. With this brilliantly imagined novel, Nobel Prize laureate Toni Morrison audaciously transfigures the coming-of-age story as she follows Milkman from his Rust Belt city to the place of his family's origins. Morrison introduces an entire cast of strivers, liars, and assassins, the inhabitants of a fully realized Black world. Song of Solomon, and you're listening to Lit Society.
Let's get lit!
Hi, readers. This is Alexis.
And this is Kari.
You're listening to Lit Society, a podcast about books and drama.
You are. I see you're reading the book jacket today. Now, listeners, you likely know that we write our own synopsises, our intros, but life happens.
It does.
And you get busy. And sometimes you got to plagiarize.
Ooh, I don't know if that's the right thing, but we did use her words to tell the story. What better way than to have Toni Morrison tell them herself?
Wow. Yeah, that's why we did it, because no one can tell the synopsis better than Toni can. But I don't think she wrote that part. That was probably her.
That's okay.
Publisher.
Anyway, jumping right into it. Tell me about what you did fun this week, or one thing you did for self-care. Let's get started.
See, I'm a little darker today. You know, the darker the weave, the sweeter the juice.
Oh,
I don't know if they say that, but they should.
I don't know if they say that at all, but okay.
It's a thing now. So, yeah, that was fun. And it was also a little self-care, you know, a shampoo day. What about you? What did you do for self-care, and what did you do for fun this week?
I did nothing for fun. I'm gonna have to keep thinking about that. And for self-care, I've been preparing to go back to work. I know it's in the offing, so I've been mentally preparing to get up in the morning, wash my face, brush my teeth, like first thing when I wake up.
Wait, when do you usually do it? What happened? What? What you been doing?
That's none of your business, okay? That's none of your business, okay? What I do in my abode, okay, is my business.
Okay. All right. So
anyway, the point is, I'm trying to go back to work. Okay.
Do you have to go back soon? Are you going back to your 1,500 square foot office?
They gave us a kind of a timeline, so in the next couple of months, we might be going back into the office. So
wow. Yeah. Okay, that's cool.
All right. So why don't we jump into Society Says, where we share your comments with the rest of our lit society. Kari, is there a comment you thought particularly lit?
So this week's comment that I thought was particularly lit comes from Castbox, and this comes from someone named Matrix. They said, loved both episodes, referring to The Warmth of Other Suns, which is a two-part episode.
That's a really good one.
I love that one too. And they continue, you are awesome. Thank you. What? Thank you, Matrix.
Yeah,
you make it fun to be in the Matrix.
You.
Yeah, so that's from Castbox. Some of these platforms allow listeners to leave their comments, which I love. What about you? Is there a comment you found particularly lit that you'd like to share?
This is from Polly's mama. I love Alexis and Kari. I'd never been one for podcasts, but with the pandemic, I wanted to go out of my comfort zone of only listening to music when on my daily walk. Bingo! I saw Lit Society on the best podcast list and decided to give it a try. Cool. That
awesome.
was in April, and I've been hooked ever since. I love the variety of book genres discussed and the framework you use in the podcast. Your humor, honesty, and complimentary styles keep me engaged and wanting more. Right now, I listen to you as a snowbird in the Florida Keys, but when I get home to Peoria and when things get back to a more normal, I hope the two of you will have a meet and greet in Chicagoland. I will be there.
Who want to meet us?
Hey.
Well, that's sweet. Thank you.
That is sweet. Polly's mama. We appreciate you.
Mhm.
Remember, readers, to have your comments shared, message us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and we especially love this one, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts.
Yeah, do it.
Please and
We
thank
love it.
you. We
Yes.
love those reviews. All right. So we're going to, because, things happen. We skipping the theme of the week this week, folks.
I actually like that because we can kind of talk about our thoughts of the book.
Okay, that sounds good.
And this book needs room for that.
Okay, so now let's discuss Toni Morrison. I know we talked about Toni Morrison a bit in Sula, episode 9 during our first season. So if you have any extra information you'd like to share, why don't you share that and any context related to this book?
Yeah, Toni had such like a rich life and imprint, or footprint, I should say, that she left on the literary world. There's every time I go digging for something about Toni, I find something new. So, in her foreword to the vintage, so you may remember I told you this is the first book I read in a day. I don't know how old I was, but I remembered the cover clearly.
Yeah.
And I found it on eBay.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, it made me feel so good. So I remember that, I don't know, 12, 13-year-old girl.
It's got wings on it?
Yeah.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, there it is. Thank you. Yeah, I should show the class.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah, and it wasn't a crazy expensive book. The list price, and it feels like new, by the way. The list price in here is $18.95. I think I paid $16 for it. So that was a deal. Yeah. So in her foreword to the vintage edition, Morrison writes that she used to despise artists who talked about their muses. I don't know if you heard it.
I actually watched that video. Mm-hmm.
Oh, you did? See?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Have you seen that like kind of docu movie about her? I forget the name of it.
Yes, I think it was on Netflix, right? Or Amazon?
Probably. It's not even that old. I still have to watch that. Okay, so to answer your question that you asked 5 years ago about background on Toni and context of the book, she talks about how she doesn't believe in muses, and that's stupid. But when her father died, she decided, no, maybe that's a thing. And I love that because her father saw her in a certain light. First of all, he made sure to show all his children that he loved them. And he gave them special attention that was tailored to their unique personalities, and kept a letter that she wrote in his pocket for years.
Isn't that precious? But he did something special for each one of his children, and it left them feeling like they were each more important than the other one, like his favorite. And that was really special.
I love that. So if he was your daddy, he'd take you to the library.
Right.
And if I was your sister, he'd take me to go get like makeup from Sephora and act like it was the best thing he, ever wanted to do. So anyway, she says her ideas of inspiration were destroyed when she wrote Song of Solomon, because her father had recently died. And more than she mourned him, she mourned how he saw her. Yeah. That person that he saw no longer existed when he died. And that theme of who you are compared to how people see you is really carried throughout the book. So I can see the connection there. She wanted to give credibility to each character in this book. And without stepping on the end of our show, I will say that I feel like her efforts are clear, and everything in this book you have to pay attention to because it all relates to the plot. Nothing is just happening to happen. All of it is connected. And she tells a very specific African-American, Black American story really thoroughly. So this is also a more masculine book than the one she wrote before that. I feel like this is her, I don't want to say nothing crazy, but it might be like her 10th novel or something.
Oh, I don't remember.
Sorry, y'all, I didn't Google it. But this is a purposeful diversion from a more feminine way of writing, quote unquote. There are dates here that she's following, a timeline, and a more traditionally masculine style of writing. And so I wanted, so I wanted to share that little background on a little bit of Toni and the context for this book.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Well, why don't
You're
you
welcome.
give us a brief synopsis without spoilers before we start our deep dive?
This will be very brief. A Song of Solomon is about finding who you are in the eyes of your mother, the home of your father, and the heart of your friends and foes. It highlights the journey of Macon Dead Jr., and it shows like his discovery on this path, the things he discovers on this path. Whatever, I didn't finish it. So Alexis, I finished the book. I didn't finish the synopsis. Let me be clear. We read our books even when life happens.
Okay.
So Alexis, yeah, what were your first thoughts of Song of Solomon?
So, I was, you really introduced me to Toni Morrison with Sula.
And greens and fried chicken. That's right, friends. Alexis is a fake black. Just kidding. Just kidding.
Anyway, ignoring
I love
that.
you. I love you.
Okay, whatever.
I know you stressed today. Y'all, come on. Let's all give Alexis a little audio hug. It's okay, Alexis. This is just a podcast.
Stop it.
Calm down, girl.
Just stop it.
She needed that, y'all. Thank you. Go ahead, girl.
You introduced me to it. I had heard of her, but the first book I read was Solomon. So I was interested, and you know how I felt about Sula, excuse me. The first book I read was Sula, and you know how I felt about Sula. I was a little
what
confused.
Black foolishness is this?
I was a little
Not quite,
confused. So I was looking forward to reading Song of Solomon. I thought it was an interesting title. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the title as it relates to the book. And then, so that's what I thought when I first saw it, heard that we were going to be reading it. Who do you think would actually enjoy reading this book, Kari?
I've said this before, but if you're really into character-driven novels, if you're not looking for, actually, this has a little bit of action. It's got a lot. But really the meat of it, is the characters. So if you're into those type of books where each character has their own world that you have to discover, then you'll love Song of Solomon.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing. You ready to take this deep dive in the Song of Solomon filled with spoilers?
I am. And another reason I'm glad we cut the theme is because this is going to be more like a back and forth between me and you. There's a point in this book where I was taking notes and I had to just stop and let them. So the thing with Toni Morrison books, you don't read them. They happen to you. Oh. And so the book started happening to me and I was like, I ain't going to be able to take notes on this. I need to follow this story.
You need to have a conversation.
I need to be in a moment. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I will lay out more of the start of the book like we usually do, but then toward the end, let's talk about what's going on here. All right. Part 1, A Mother's Milk. On a street that the local black people called Not Doctor Street, an insurance salesman named Smith lived. I wanted to read the first line of the book. Hold on. This is up there. This is a way better first line than Rebecca. Like y'all be trying to make me believe.
It was one even better than that. It was what you call it. It was
Pride and Prejudice. That was good too. Oh.
Never mind, go.
Well, okay, it'll come to us. Okay. Well, Song of Solomon is up there. Top 5.
Okay.
Okay, chapter 1. Listen, you guys. The North Carolina Mutual Life Insurance agent promised to fly from Mercy to the other side of Lake Superior at 3:00. So, this is the thing.
Oh, that was it. Okay.
If you just read it, it's like, okay, listen though. Not only is this an insurance agent, which is a loaded occupation for this character, but he's planning to fly from the south to the north. This is a common path that Black Americans have traveled through the Great Migration, okay? This book, spoiler alert, someone is actually going from the north to the south to find themselves. So it's like a reverse of that. And she talked about that. I'm not pulling that out of my brain. Right. Also, at 3:00. So this is a very planned flight he plans to take. Not a planned flight he plans to take. Sorry for the redundancy. There's no plane mentioned. He's going to fly. He's going to fly himself because, Sometimes people fly. They don't, though, and it's not going to end well for him. You should know that Dr. Street is now called No Dr. Street by everybody. And at the end of No Dr. Street sits No Mercy Hospital. Okay, obviously the true name of the hospital, according to, I don't know, the comptroller, is Mercy Hospital, and the street is Dr. Street. But because the man was like, y'all call it Dr. Street because a black doctor lives there, well, now you have to call it Main Street. So everybody was like, no, we'll just call it not Dr. Street.
Right.
So
Not
they be
Dr.
writing letters
Street.
to not Dr. Street and stuff. They, you know. So anyway, there's of course pregnant women in the neighborhood, black women, but they're not allowed to give birth inside of No Mercy Hospital. Real name Mercy Hospital. Sometimes they even give birth on the stairs. That black doctor that the locals named the street after, he doesn't even have hospital rights, and he has white patients.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, you have such a like unique practice where I can give birth in your living room. They don't understand that he cannot go to the hospital, but he's such a good doctor. People at least respect him so much that hasn't, I mean, I'm sure it's dampened his progress, but he's still a very successful doctor.
Right.
So black women were not allowed to give birth inside of Mercy Hospital. That is until the day the insurance salesman, Mr. Smith, from that first line that we just read of the book, decided to take a flight, or should I say decided to fly. On that day, Ruth Dead was admitted and gave birth to her son, Macon Dead Jr. Now, how these two events are connected, you'll have to read the book. There's a lot of details that are very important to the story that I cannot go over because of time. But how him taking a flight ended in Mercy Hospital admitting its first black pregnant woman to give birth. That's the story there. You should also know that Ruth Dead, her father is the doctor that the street is named after. Ruth Dead. Her last name is Dead now, by the way, and her dad's a doctor, but her husband's last name is Dead, so her name is Ruth Dead now. As the daughter of the area's only black doctor, Ruth's family lived in a large, enviable house with many bedrooms and parlors and bathrooms. Some of the neighborhood women would even avoid company with Ruth because they were like jealous of her wealth. Those women also looked at Ruth's only son as a weirdo. That boy weird. Something wrong with him. Because the boy was like quiet and he just seemed odd to them. Others knew that Ruth was living in a prison, basically. And those women who knew Ruth called the boy deep. That little boy is deep. And they would sometimes even keep Ruth company before leaving her to the wrath of her husband, Macon Dead.
Yeah, like tea parties, right?
Yeah. Yeah, little things society women would do. There was a time when Macon loved and felt passionate. I mean, he had a strong, passionate love for his wife. He really loved that woman. Okay. And their daughters were proof of this. Their daughters, the first being Magdalene, who they call Lena, and the second named First Corinthians. That's the girl name, First Corinthians. But then one day he saw something that turned his passion for his wife into a fiery hate. More on that later. Macon is now the terror of his family. Never satisfied, demanding, hostile. Everyone lives in fear of him. Ruth's days are filled with very few joys, but one of those joys is nursing her son. In a room with green walls, she peacefully nurses her son. He sits on her lap with his feet on the floor. Now, if you like, wait a second, how he on her lap and his feet on the floor? I'm going to give you time. Yep. Yes. Exactly. That boy ain't in diapers. He's in big grown-up pants.
Yeah, he like 5 or 6.
Yeah. And he like does it to please his mom. If this is making you uncomfortable, good, because that's what Toni wanted.
Yeah.
So he's doing this to please his mom. He don't even like breast milk like that.
He like really
eating chicken now.
He was like, this is like not normal. As a 5-6-year-old,
feels like something about it isn't normal. But when Mr. Dead goes to work, Ruth unbuttons her blouse and calls her reluctant son to her. As he carefully suckles, she allows her mind to take her somewhere else, anywhere else. These moments, so sustaining for her, were put to an end when she was caught by a local janitor, the family's tenant. They own multiple buildings, and he was coming to pay his rent. And he saw through the window her nursing that big old boy in a scene that made me laugh out loud for 10 minutes. Now, there's pain in this scene, but the janitor is so... I know that man. I feel like that man's in my family.
You have to know this man. Everybody got this man in their family because he done made a joke out of your... misery, essentially.
So this is crazy. He is cracking up. He is double over. He said, in the South, I heard they do that. So I don't know. You can just picture him going, that's different, but y'all different. So it works. But before he can point and laugh in their face, when he's just in the window, Ruth sees him and her shame washes over her. She stands up quickly and drops her boy on the floor.
Well, he just stands up, essentially.
No, that boy is on the floor. That boy is on the floor with a thud, and she won't look down at him. And that's an important part because it confirms. I get it. He could have just been like, what? But she dropped him. Most of his body weight was on her lap.
He is in a relaxed state now. You sitting in the lap and being held and stuff.
I don't want to stay on this scene too much because it is making me uncomfortable. But she dropped that big old boy, and it confirmed in his mind that, this is wrong.
Yeah.
Something about this is shameful. The town then stopped calling her son Macon, and guess what they call him now?
Milkman.
They call that boy Milkman for the rest of his life, and it's stuck. Macon Sr. never was told how his son earned such an undignified name, but he guessed quite accurately that it was the fault of the boy's mother and that it was filthy somehow.
When Macon Dad got to the front door of his office, he saw a stout woman and 2 young boys standing a few feet away. Macon unlocked his door, walked over to his desk, and settled himself behind it. As he was thumbing through his accounts book, the stout woman entered alone. "Afternoon, Mr. Dad, sir. I'm Mrs. Baines. Live over at number 3 on 15th Street." Macon Dad remembered not the woman, but the circumstances at number 3. His tenant's grandmother or aunt or something had moved there, and the rent was long overdue. "Yes, Mrs. Baines, you got something for me?" "Well, that's what I come to talk to you about. Since he left all them babies with me, my relief check ain't no more it take to keep a well-grown yard dog alive. Half alive, I should say. Your rent is $4 a month, Mrs. Baines. You 2 months behind already." "I do know that, Mr. Dead, sir. But babies can't make it with nothing to put in their stomach." Their voices were low, polite, without any hint of conflict. "Can they make it on the street, Mrs. Baines? That's where they're going to be if you don't figure out some way to get me my money." "No, sir. They can't make it on the street. We need both, I reckon, same as yours does." "Then you better rustle it up, Mrs. Baines. You got till..." He swiveled around to consult the calendar on the wall. "Till Saturday. Coming. Saturday, Mrs. Baines. Not Sunday, not Monday. Saturday." If she had been younger and had more juice, the glitter in her eyes would have washed down onto her cheeks. Now, at her time of life, it simply gleamed. She pressed the flat of her hand on Macon Dad's desk and, holding the gleam steady in her eyes, pushed herself up from the chair. She turned her head a little as to look out the plate glass window and then back at him. "What's it gonna profit you, Mr. Dad, sir, to put me and them children out?" "Saturday, Mrs. Baines." Lowering her head, Mrs. Baines whispered something and walked slowly and heavily from the office. As she closed the door to Sonny's shop, her grandchildren moved out of the sunlight into the shadow where she stood. "What'd he say, Granny?" Mrs. Baines put a hand on the taller boy's hair and fingered it lightly, absently, searching with her nails for teeter spots. "He must have told her no," said the other boy. "Do we gotta move?" The tall boy tossed his head free of her fingers and looked at her sideways. His cat eyes were gashes of gold. Mrs. Baines let her hand fall to her side. "A nigger in business is a terrible thing to see. A terrible, terrible thing to see. The boys looked at each other and back at their grandmother. Their lips were parted as though they had heard something important.
Moving on. Woo. His property. That's what she said. His properties, 2 buildings he owned by 25 years old, were the collateral that gave Macon Dead the courage to approach the most important black man in the city, the doctor, and ask for permission to court his daughter back in the day. What he didn't know and what he never knew was that the doctor was extremely grateful for this suitor to save him from the affections of his daughter. A devotion that made the doctor uncomfortable since the girl, his only child, since her mother died. So it's just the doctor and his daughter, Ruth, in the house now. And he feels like she's too attached to him. She still wants him to kiss her goodnight. And she looks so much like her mother that it's just all gross to him. He's like, I'm actually suffocating under your love, little girl, and I would love for you to get married and just go to some man somewhere.
Yeah.
I should also talk a little bit about Macon Dead's sister, a woman named Pilot. No, not the flying type of pilot. I'll tell you. So their mother, Macon and Pilot, this is going to be confusing if you haven't read the book, maybe. But just roll with it. You'll be fine. Not you, Alexis, because you read the book. I'm talking to you, listener, who's still listening and ain't read the book. So Macon Dead's sister, Pilot. Their mother, Pilot and Macon, their mother died in birth with the girl, with Pilot. And the father was so angry that he named the girl Pilot after Pontius Pilate because he was mad at God for letting his wife die. Pilot, the daughter, is an outcast.
But
not
also,
just because...
But also, this is... He like pointed in the book and picked a name, and that happened to be it.
So this is a practice that some people still do. They'll close their eyes and allow their finger to just roll the Bible, because I ain't gonna say nothing, but anyway. And then they name their kid whatever the finger is on. That's how Destiny's Child got here. I don't know if you know that.
Oh, I didn't know that. Is that true?
Yeah, that's true.
Okay.
That's how they got their group name. But anyway, so Pilot is an outcast, not just because she has a daughter and no husband, and that daughter also has a daughter but no husband, but because all of them, Pilot, her daughter, and her granddaughter, are bootleggers. They are bootleggers. They sell alcohol and they eat like children, like without any thought for planning or tradition or nutrition. Whatever's around, whatever they got a craving for, they'll eat or whatever. Also, because Pilot was literally, born without a navel. She don't have a belly button, y'all. She crawled out of a dead body at birth. Her mother was dead, seemingly marked as not human because she was without a belly button.
Right.
Macon Dead is ashamed of his family's foolish names, starting with Dead, first given to his family because some careless white clerk made an error. And then their father, great-grandfather, never changed it. And then his sister...
Because he couldn't read.
But even when he found out what it was, he didn't change it, which he could have. And then his sister...
Because his wife liked it. He said it was cute.
And then Macon's sister named after the man who condemned Jesus to death. Then his son, Milkman. Macon is like, can we have some honorable names in this family, please? And Macon Dead had once loved his sister dearly, by the way.
Yeah.
But respect and status meant more to him than anything, and she threatened both, so he hated her. Part 2. Everything bad that ever happened to him happened because he couldn't read. One day, Milkman snuck off to visit his Aunt Pilot for the first time. A boy from school named Guitar said that he knew her. The woman wasn't pretty, Milkman thought, but once he saw her, he was intoxicated by her. Everything about her was interesting. And she was, she had the type of personality that he hadn't seen anywhere else in his world. The way she spoke, even her stature. Yeah, her stature. He was like, "You as tall as a man." Like, that can't happen. But anyway,
In
Milkman
his world,
really
it
sheltered.
didn't. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. She was tall like his father and spoke with grit in her voice. She was interesting, and they hung on to her every word. It was his aunt who told Milkman how his grandfather, Pilot and Macon's father, died. When his dad found out that Milkman had gone to see his bootlegging auntie, the daddy was furious. Macon was furious. But he filled in the gaps in Pilot's story about their father. So Pilot had told Milkman, "Your grandfather, I watched him get blown 5 feet into the air." Macon, though, told his son that his father worked hard on land until white people tricked him out of his land and took everything from him, including his life. Macon's father was born a slave, but he earned his own place, his own farm. And Macon loved his father. Both parents he loved, his father and his mother. So this man that Milkman sees as so evil, his dad, actually came from a household that was full of love and hard work. So one day his father, Macon's dad, Milkman's granddad, was sitting on a fence waiting for the men who tricked him. So he was going to get them, I guess. But those men came from behind him and shot him. Again, according to Pilot, 5 feet in the air. Those men made orphans out of Macon and Pilot. And Pilot says that it was at this point that the two of them, her and her brother, began living in the woods. Everything bad that happened to his father, Macon reasoned, happened because that man couldn't read, because his dad couldn't read. It was because he couldn't read that he allowed a clerk to register his name as dead, passing the name on to his children for generations. And then it was his illiteracy that got him shot. But from his father, Macon learned the importance of owning things and owning other things with the things you own. So if you own enough things, you can even own people. And that was the lesson he was going to teach Milkman. Property, real estate. So anyway, Milkman and Guitar. Remember, Guitar is the boy from school. He's like a little bit worldly. He knows things. Milkman is, privileged and
he's also
stupid.
About 5 years older than him. Also.
Oh, he's older too. Yeah. Okay. All right. So they go to this bar during school hours, and a man named Feather is like, I guess this is where Guitar usually goes and gets his beer. But Feather looks at Milkman and is like, "You can't come in here with him." And Guitar is like, "What you mean? Milkman is with me." He's like, "I don't care who he with. I know his daddy." So this is the thing. Everyone hates Milkman's dad because he owns property and he's ruthless and they all owe him money and it's just terrible. And then Tommy, another character in the book, who should I go into? So I'll just briefly touch on this. After Guitar and Milkman leave that bar without beer, remember they're supposed to be in school.
Yeah,
they're sad because they can't get a beer.
Right.
A man named Tommy, a very wise man, talks to them for what feels like 5 hours about other stuff they ain't gonna have in life. Baked Alaska, for example.
That's right.
Privilege, prestige. You ain't never gonna have that either. A joy,
so
a good woman.
Worried about
you ain't
beer?
Gonna have that either. Basically, Tommy is telling them, y'all two are like little scoundrel children, and you ain't gonna have a lot in life the way you going. So just this beer that you missed out on,
big deal.
This the least of your troubles. Okay, so Guitar shares with Milkman as they're going through their day, still sad that they couldn't get beer, why he doesn't like sweets. Guitar doesn't have a sweet tooth, and Milkman's like, everybody likes sweets. Why don't you like sweets, Guitar? And Guitar tells him that he doesn't like sweets because on the day that his dad got ripped in half while working on a saw, the owner of the factory came by the house with, I think, $40 for his mother. And a bag full of candy. So he had lost his dad, and this was the compensation: $40 and a bag full of candy. That's all they were ever going to have. And so candy reminds him of dead people and white people. That's what he says. Ever since his father got sliced up, that's all candy makes him think of. Moving on. Macon is thrilled that his son, as he's growing, Remember, his son is Milkman. His son is working for him and really becoming like his son instead of his wife's son.
Right.
So Macon is like, he hates his wife, Ruth, and he knows that this nickname, Milkman, comes from her somehow. And it's his determination to never allow his boy to be a mama's boy. He wants him to be his, father's boy, if that's a word or a phrase. So anyway, that seems to be happening as he grows in the real estate business. The last time, though, Macon slapped his wife. Oh, by the way, Macon doesn't just hate Ruth, he beats her. So when Milkman is 22 years old and his father stands up to slap his wife, Ruth, Milkman stands up to his father and slaps him against a radiator. On that day, Ruth told a story that her daughter was convinced Ruth contrived and performed for the sole purpose of getting her husband to hit her. They're sitting at a table. Who's sitting there? It's a lot of characters. Sorry.
The family.
Macon dead, his wife Ruth, 1 Corinthians, Lena, and Milkman. They're sitting at the family table for dinner. And then Ruth goes, I went to this funeral and it was in a Catholic church and I took communion because that's what you're supposed to do, I guess. And then afterward, the priest told me that only Catholics are supposed to take communion in a Catholic church. But right then, it wasn't a funeral. Sorry, it was a wedding. But then,
that's right.
The
it was
mother,
her daughter's wedding. Mm-hmm.
Or the son's. The son was her. The groom was her son. So then,
my son.
The mother of the groom introduces Ruth. These are white people, by the way. So there's some status here. Introduces Ruth as the daughter of the doctor that saved the groom's life. We wouldn't even have a wedding if it wasn't for this woman's father. Mm-hmm. All Macon can think was, dummy, you thought you could take communion in a Catholic church and you ain't even Catholic? This is all quite funny until he hits her. And then it turns wrong really quick. Well, after seeing his mom get hit for 22 years, Milkman stands up to his father. But as soon as he does, he hit his father. And he don't hate his father. He's maybe a little scared of him, but it hurt him to hurt his father. And then he looked in his sister's eyes, and they always seemed like one person. That's how much he cared about them. But in that moment, their hate for him, for Milkman, for hitting their father, was so specific, they for the first time became two individual people. So he did this gallant thing, but no one appreciates it.
Yeah, not the mother, not his sisters. And his sisters are like many years, double-digit years older than him also.
Yes, because he came after that love that the couple shared was long gone. Yeah, that's a good point. So, y'all, he goes up to his room and then he gets a knock on the door and his father's there. He like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what you think you're going to do, but let me just apologize and let's forget this ever happened. Yeah. And Macon's like, no, if you're going to be big enough to hit me, you got to have some knowledge behind that fist. And so he proceeds to tell him about his mom. Dramatic pause.
Insert here.
So Macon sits down Milkman and tells him, do you know who your mother is? Your mother's father never liked me, and I have to say I was very disappointed in him. He was just about the biggest Negro in the city, not the richest, but the most respected. But a bigger hypocrite never lived. Kept all his money in 4 different banks, always calm and dignified. I thought he was naturally that way until I found out he sniffed ether. Negroes in this town worshipped him. He didn't care about them, though, called them cannibals. He delivered both your sisters himself, and each time all he was interested in was the color of their skin. He would have disowned you. I didn't like the notion of his being his own daughter's doctor, especially since she was also my wife. Mercy wouldn't take colored then. Anyway, Ruth wouldn't go to any other doctor. I tried to get a midwife for her, but the doctor said midwives were dirty. I told him a midwife delivered me, and if a midwife was good enough for my mother, a midwife was good enough for his daughter. Well, We had some words between us about it, and I ended up telling him that nothing could be nastier than a father delivering his own daughter's baby. That stamped it. We had very little to say after that, but they did it anyway. Both Lena and Corinthians, they let me do the naming by picking a word blind, but that was all. Your sisters are just a little over a year apart, you know? And both times, he was there. She had her legs wide open and he was there. I know he was a doctor and doctors not supposed to be bothered by things like that, but he was a man before he was a doctor. I knew then they'd gang up on me forever, the both of them, and no matter what I did, they managed to have things their way. And so there's also an investment that he wanted to take advantage of involving a railroad. And he asked his father-in-law for money, and he asked his wife to ask his father-in-law for money. And she said the decision would have to be up to him. She said that to her own husband, Macon thinks. So he's like, who are you married to, me or the doctor or your dad, you know? So then the doctor gets very sick because apparently he had been abusing some type of painkiller, and everyone knew it. Ether?
Yep.
So everyone knew it, but they still respected him as a doctor. But eventually that habit started to eat away at his body. And the day he died, Macon says he walked in on his wife laying in the nude next to her father with the dead man's fingers in her mouth.
That sounds disgusting.
That's what Macon says. And so he's saying this to Milkman, his son, and Milkman's like, what am I supposed to do with this information?
I don't know why you and mom why you don't like mom, but I don't really need to know that information. And you telling me this don't help none. I don't need it.
So Macon wants his son to know that there is something incestuously obscene about his mother, about Ruth, about the woman that Macon married. Milkman is like, he stands up, he goes, I need to breathe some different kind of air. And he walks out the house. And he thinks, oh, my family is strange. All of them weirdos. It was then, as he's walking, that he remembers a room with green walls. It's a room for nursing. And he remembers laughter, uncontrollable laughter. Someone was laughing and his mother was shamed. His mother was ashamed, but why? Oh, because she dropped a nursing child. But it wasn't a child. It was a boy old enough to walk and talk and wear pants instead of diapers. And the boy was him. And that's why they call him Milkman. It all comes back to him now. And he reasons, maybe what my father is saying is true. Milkman begins to wonder if there was anyone in his life who liked him with purity, who wasn't obscene. He began hastily looking forward to seeing Guitar, his friend. Surrounded by men, he finds Guitar in a bar, I think, with the television blazing. And they're looking at the story of a black boy from the North who was killed in the South. It's on the news. They say that the boy whistled at a white woman and refused to say that he didn't. So he was lynched. That boy's name was Emmett Till. Ugh. A heated back and forth starts between the men in the bar. Some are kind of blaming the boy for not playing by society's rules, by white people's rules. Others are like,
He was too young. He wouldn't have known.
No, he was a child, and this is completely wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So this heated back and forth starts, and then they start trading their own horrific tales, how society has walked all over them, and then that all distills or dies down into laughter, because this is a coping mechanism. They start telling jokes, and they're like, man, that happened to you? You never believe what happened to me and my mama. And then they're like, yeah, society is terrible. And in that laughter, Guitar is like processing in his mind. You get the feeling here that Guitar doesn't have, he doesn't have a father, but there's no authoritative figure in his life leading him. But these men, And this is the lesson that he's getting from them, that this is what society does. And he's not getting it just from them. He's getting it from society because it's the truth. So in this world, being Black is reason enough to die, according to some. With all of that weight, with Milkman got the story of his mom on his shoulders, and then Guitar has Emmett Till in his mind and heart. They go into a bar. This is a bar that's a great time around midnight, but it's 8:30 in the afternoon and ain't nobody there.
Right.
And Milkman is like, I just needed to see you, Guitar. I just needed to see your face. Because remember, he's like, who in my life is normal and who loves me for me without being weird? So, accurately, Guitar guesses everything that's wrong with Milkman in a vague sort of sense. He's like, what's wrong with you, Milkman? Milkman's like, I can't tell you. Come on, Milkman. We in this bar. You might as well tell me. I hit my dad. Oh, let me guess. That's really rough. You hit your dad, but let me guess. No one's happy you did that. Not your mom, not your sisters.
Right.
And now you kind of feel like what you even do it for, it was the right thing to do, but was it worth it? And he's like, yeah, man, that's exactly it. You know what? Let's just take a quick break. Come back.
Sounds good to me.
Finish the second half. All right. Sounds good. And we're back. So, Alexis, let's talk about Hagar. Now, Hagar is Pilot's granddaughter. Pilot has one daughter named Reba, and Reba has one daughter named Hagar. Hagar, when Milkman is 17, as you helped me realize, because I thought he was 12 when this started. I was really disgusted. But he was 17 when Hagar, Milkman, first cousins, form a Jane Austen-ish relationship.
That is, okay. That's true.
So they're kissing cousins. Now, the thing about Hagar, Pilot, and Pilot's daughter, Reba, Pilot, Reba, and Hagar, is that they're generous people. And they're not giving constantly to others because they want something in return. They're genuinely thoughtful, caring, loving women. So they'll give you the shirt off their back if they have it. But one day, Reba's boyfriend, and she has a few, decides that she's holding out some money from him.
She done gave him all the monies.
Because she'd give you the shirt off her back. But he decides she's holding out on him, and he's going to hit her. And so from inside the house, while that's going on in the backyard, Hagar, the Reba's daughter, and Pilot are in the house. Right. And Hagar goes, hey, Grandma, I think that man mad at my mama, and he gonna hit her. And Pilot calmly goes and gets the knife.
Pilot looked up from a 4th grade geography book she was reading and closed it. Slowly, it seemed to Milkman, she walked over to a shelf that hung over the dry sink, put the geography book on it, and removed the knife. Slowly still, she walked out the front door. There was no back door, and as soon as she did, Milkman could hear Reba's screams and the man's curses. It didn't occur to him to stop Pilot. Her mouth was not moving, and her earring flashed fire. But he did follow her, as did Hagar, around to the back of the house, where, approaching the man from the back, she whipped her right arm around his neck and positioned the knife at the edge of his heart. She waited until the man felt the knife point before she jabbed it skillfully, about 1/4 of an inch through his shirt into the skin. Still holding his neck so he couldn't see but could feel the blood making his shirt sticky, she talked to him. Now, I'm not going to kill you, honey. Don't you worry none. Just be still a minute. The heart's right here, but I'm not going to stick it in any deeper. Because if I stick it in any deeper, it'll go straight through your heart. So you have to be real still, you hear? You can't move an inch, because I might lose control. It's just a little hole now, honey. No more than a pin scratch. You might lose about 2 tablespoons of blood, but no more. And if you're real still, honey, I can get it back out without no mistake. But before I do that, I thought we'd have a little talk. The man closed his eyes. Sweat ran from his temples down the sides of his face. A few neighbors who had heard Reba's screams had gathered in Pilot's backyard. They knew right away that the man was a newcomer to the city. Otherwise, he would have known a few things about Reba, one of which was that she gave away everything she had, and if there was a cash quarter in that house, she'd have given it to him. And more important, he would have known not to fool with anything that belonged to Pilot, who never bothered anybody, was helpful to everybody, but who also was believed to have the power to step out of her skin, set a bush afire from 50 yards, and turn a man into a ripe rutabaga, all on account of the fact that she had no navel. So, they didn't have much sympathy for him. They just craned their necks to hear better what Pilot was telling him. You see, darling, that there is the only child I got, the first baby I ever had. And if you could turn around and see my face, which of course you can't because my hand might slip, you'd know she's also the last. Women are foolish, you know, and mamas are the most foolish of all. And you know how mamas are, don't you? You got a mama, ain't you? Sure you have. So you know what I'm talking about. Mamas get hurt and nervous when somebody don't like their children. First real misery I ever had in my life was when I found out somebody, a little teeny tiny boy it was, didn't like my little girl. Made me so mad I didn't know what to do. We do the best we can, but we ain't got the strength you men got. That's why it makes us so sad if a grown man start beating up on one of us. You know what I mean? I'd hate to pull this knife out and have you try some other time to act mean to my little girl. 'Cause one thing I know for sure, whatever she done, she's been good to you. Still, I'd hate to push it in more and have your mama feel like I do now. I confess, I don't know what to do. Maybe you can help me. Tell me, what should I do? The man struggled for breath, and Pilot eased up on his throat, but not his heart. Let me go, he whispered. Let me go. I won't never put a hand on her. I promise.
It's right after the end of this episode that Milkman and Hagar form a relationship. While all of this is going on in the foreground, in the background, reader, you find out that there are murders happening around town. Random murders, white victims. And no one really knows why. The only thing connecting these murders is the fact that there are murders, because few things happen in this town. So for this to be happening semi-consistently, they must be connected. But that's all they got. They have no clues. And there is a legend.
And they're not very close together. So it's not like one happened last week Saturday and one happened 2 Saturdays before. It's not like that.
Right. So there is this legend that a woman that's in a madhouse breaks out every once in a while, kills someone, and goes back in, but there's no way to that. So in my mind, I'm like, who the murderer? But Alexis, you never had. I mean, this book at this point is now, it has gone from a drama to a full-on murder mystery. But you don't feel like it was a mystery?
No, I don't feel like it was a mystery. I feel like the people knew who was doing the murders already. But
did you know as the reader?
I knew it was a black person, based on the idea that remember they said they saw the black guy running away.
Yeah, something about his shoes looked black, and it was a little detail that didn't seem to be purposely given by the talker. Yeah.
And so I didn't feel like that was like really in question. Like,
but you didn't know who it was, did you?
Right. No, I didn't know.
So it's a mystery. I didn't
feel like it was something that needed to be figured out.
Oh, you was just like it's folks dying.
Yes.
Okay.
That was a part of the story. So.
Meanwhile, I'm like, is it the town drunk Freddy? Who is it? Oh, well.
Nope.
Okay. So I'm really trying to figure out who did it by this point. So just keep that in y'all mind. There are murders happening while everyone's story is going on.
Right. Right.
So back to Hagar and Milkman. Hagar is so plentiful with her love of Milkman and so consistent that he is bored of his cousin and he breaks it off. He's in a conversation, by the way, with Guitar one day, and Guitar is like, why would you ask me that the day before you die? And it's weird as a reader because you're like, because I'm
what are they
so
talking about?
Right. And I'm trying to figure out the murderer. So I'm like, Guitar gonna kill Milkman. But no, Guitar knows that Hagar is gonna kill Milkman one of these days because we find out Hagar is just always trying to kill Milkman. That's what she does now. She hunts him and tries to kill him. And he's tired of running because he's also tired of his family, including his cousin Hagar. So
she is his family.
Yeah, it's really gross.
She's been trying to kill him for the past 6 months.
He's got that weird mom, or does he? So while he's laying around waiting for Hagar to kill him, he thinks about the day he followed his mom, finally. So Ruth, dead, Milkman's mom, leaves the house sometimes and no one knows where she goes. And that used to anger her husband, who's already violent, but now everyone's just kind of gotten used to it. But Milkman decides to follow her one day. He follows the bus that she catches in a car, a few blocks back. And then he follows her to a train station, boards the train, and follows her to a cemetery in another town where I think she's like laying on a grave.
I don't know.
Okay.
But I guess you would if you just talking to the grave.
I don't even know if she was talking to it.
Yes, she said she would go to talk to her father. She did say that.
So it's her father's grave, you guys. So she's coming out the grave and Milkman goes, Mama! She goes, oh! Yes.
You know the situation when somebody startle you. And
yes. And it's dark. It's because she...
Mind you, it's like 3:00 in the morning. Oh. Because she does this in the middle of the night.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Milkman goes, well, I guess Daddy was right. You are truly crazy and gross. And, I hate you a little. And so Ruth decides to tell Milkman her truth. Yeah. The truth about her and her father's relationship. This is why you can't trust none secondhand. So she tells her son, listen, it is true that I loved my father very much. He's the only person in my life that ever cared about me, that ever asked what I thought, how I felt. He's the only one who cared about me. And this is kind of mirroring maybe Toni's relationship with her father. Because when he died, when Ruth's father, the doctor, died, she saw that there was no one else in her world that cared about her. Not her husband, even though the husband, was still loving her a little then, he didn't genuinely care about the type of person she was. Her father, the doctor, although he had his faults, he was addicted to ether. He was a caring person. He would buy flowers. Right. He was thoughtful, at least to her, and he saw her who she was. So when he died, no one else had that relationship with her. And so Milkman is like, yeah, but when he died, you laid next to him nude and put his fingers in your mouth. And she look at him like,
please don't repeat that, son, because you sound stupid.
You is not the brightest bulb in the lamp, is you, boy? And so she goes, no. However, I was in my slip, and to see his body white from sickness and wasting away, I kissed his hands, those hands that cared so much about me. And then Milkman is like, okay, well, that might be okay, but you nursed me and I was too old. And she was like, I prayed for you too. What harm did I do to you on my knees praying for you? And so in a moment, all of this gross perversion that his father had painted, perhaps because of his own anger or grudge with not getting the investment money from the doctor, having the doctor birth his daughters.
Yep.
When he opened the door and saw his wife in her slip kissing her father's hands, in his mind, she was completely naked and the fingers were in her mouth. It was over the top, egregiously disgusting. And he decided to hate her from that moment on. Because that's truly what he saw, because that's all his hatred for her would let him see. Right. But the truth was much more innocent. And in a second, when Milkman hears his mother's side of the story, which he should have probably asked for to begin with, but whatever, everything becomes more clear, and he no longer understands how he feels about anyone in his family. Mm-hmm. Is his father a liar? Not really, but kind of. And his mom is just kind of pathetic now to him. But this grotesque thing that he had saw her as, even incestuous, just wasn't true. And in hindsight, kind of ridiculous to believe. So he's thinking this while he's laying in bed waiting for his first cousin, who he used to go out with, to kill him. And so Hagar comes in. She's like, I got you. And he's like, okay, I'm ready.
He like literally laying in bed, like with his back to her and waiting for her to bring the knife down.
Let's get the show started. But she can't do it.
She does, doesn't she? She clips him a little bit, but then when she brings it back up, she can't do it again.
Is that what happened? Well, all I know, she was stuck with her hand in the air and the knife, and he got up and he got up, walked out of the room, and she was stuck like that for weeks till Guitar came back, and because it was Guitar's room that they were in. And Guitar's like, man, you're beautiful. This is sad. This is really pathetic. Aww. Yeah, so that happened. When Ruth, Milkman's mom, finds out that Hagar has been running all over the place trying to kill her boy, she confronts Hagar. And Hagar has like this respect for her as the woman of the man she loves. But she tells Ruth, you know, he's my home. Your son, he's my everything. He's my home in this world. And Ruth goes, and I am his. Because it kind of seemed like Ruth wanted to jump her, right?
It does. She went there to charge her up for sure.
Yeah.
To charge her up.
And Pilate walks in while this conversation is happening and reminds them that he wouldn't give anything for either of y'all. That boy is selfish and a little slow. So let's stop this foolishness.
Not worth anything to him.
As much as y'all putting into your feelings for this man don't care nothing about you, his mom, or you, his first cousin, So Milkman is not without financial stability, but he's stifled by his family, by their weirdness, their grudges, hates, and unmerciful existence. By now, his father even depends on him to carry on the real estate business, the family real estate business. And this adds to Milkman's anxiety. So remember when he kind of was feeling like this before, he went to see Guitar because he had to look in the face of someone who loved him purely.
Right.
So he goes to see Guitar, and Guitar is like, hey, you know the murders that's been happening all over town? It's me. It me. So Guitar belongs to a group of men, vigilantes, known as the 7 Days Vigilante Group. And what they do is, if a black person is unjustly killed, they do what they consider to be evening out the score. And they just kill a random white person who fits the description of the black person that was killed. So, for example, Emmett Till was killed, and so a white boy was killed. I don't know if it was soon after or how soon they do it. But you know about the girls in the church that were killed, and so that happened on a Sunday. So all the unjust killings that are done to black people on a Sunday, Guitar has to avenge. He's the Sunday man. Yeah. There's like a Monday man, a Tuesday man, so on and so forth. That's why they're the 7 Day Vigilante Group. And Guitar's reasoning is that they are an unnatural people, and so we have to balance the scales. And then Milkman is like, and this is the one time where I'm like, Milkman, you got a little bit of sense. So Milkman tells him, if you can kill someone because of their race, you can kill because of anything. You don't see me as Milkman. You see me as a Negro. That's the only reason you ain't killing me. And then Guitar is like, no, because I'm not unnatural. And Milkman's like, hey, you could change your mind one day and I won't be Milkman to you, even though we've known each other forever. And maybe you'll start killing Negroes too. If you can kill, you can kill, period. And you's a killer.
It's old people running this organization now, but as soon as they die out and younger ones come in, they gonna say, let's change the rules here. We're gonna add some more people to this killing routine.
Yeah. And something we didn't go over is that there's a man named Porter. Is that his name? Porter?
Yeah. There's a Porter.
Mm-hmm. So when Macon dad was walking home one day from work, he went to Porter's house to get his rent.
Right.
And Porter was drunk and crying and peeing out the window on women's heads below. And he wouldn't give Macon his money. But then he eventually passed out and Macon got his money. Well, Porter had temporarily lost his mind because he's a 7-day Vigilante member. And he, they kill out of love, they think. And he was telling God, I can't take no more of this love. Give me some hate. I'm so sick of this love. Also, the insurance agent at the very beginning of the story that did take that flight, he jumped off a building. He was also part of this group and he lost it. So what they try to do when a member of their group is like losing it because of the stress of the job, they try to take care of him before it goes as far as it did with the insurance salesman and he jumps off a building.
Yeah, they give him some time off.
Exactly. I'll take your day.
HR. Time off.
It's a full organization. So, now, next time Milkman sees his father, Macon, dead, Macon tells him more about the way that their father truly died. So, it's true that Macon and Pilot saw their dad sitting on a fence and then get shot to the point where he was blown 5 feet into the sky. And then they had to start living in the woods, living in abandoned buildings. They did live with a couple families, but that didn't last forever, or people would try to misuse them. And then one day they decided to take cover in a cave as children, orphans. While they're in the cave, in the back of the cave, there is a white body that Macon in his mind remembers coming toward him. So he stabbed it to death. And when he looked again at the face of the body, it was his father's face. Pilot also saw the body and recognized it to be their father. Their father that was shot.
I get that.
Yeah, that was already supposed to be dead.
Okay, I didn't get that.
Also in the back where the man's body was were gold nuggets. So Pilot and Macon have a fight. Macon leaves the cave for 3 days. And when he comes back, I think both the body, but definitely the gold is gone.
Okay. And I feel like the body was still there.
So I don't feel like that because of the bag, but I could be wrong.
But then what about, well, maybe you'll get to this part.
Okay. But bring it up.
Okay.
You corrected me. I can't remember everything. Thank you. So, Macon dad is like, I think that gold is at my sister house, Pilot, and I want you to steal it, Milkman. And Milkman doesn't really put up a fight. He's like, okay, I'll steal it. And maybe he's like, with this gold, I can get away from my family.
Right.
But it is shocking because he has affection for Pilot, but he's willing to steal from her.
Yeah.
And Milkman hires Guitar as his accomplice because he still loves Guitar, even though Guitar is a murderer. And Guitar is like, yeah, I'll do it for sure, twice.
Also, because Guitar needed some money to handle his next assignment.
Yes. Yep. So Milkman enlists Guitar into this mission, and the two pay a visit to the house of the 3 women, Pilot, Reba, and Hagar. Pilot, unbeknownst to them, is watching as they break into the home.
Because she's smart.
And steal a bag. She's very smart. Let's take a break from the boys and let's talk about the girls.
Ooh. Get into it.
Milkman's sisters, First Corinthians, yes, that's still her name, and Magdalene, who everyone calls Lena, it was assumed that they'd marry wealthy doctors. In fact, First Corinthians went to college in France and came back very cultured, maybe too cultured for the men in her class, because at 42, she woke up and realized she was still single. Ooh, boo-hoo. And she was overqualified for any husband she knew, or any possible husband. So she began working as a maid for a white woman who hired her because the woman liked the poetry of her name, First Corinthians dead. She thought, that's your name? Ooh, it'll be so fancy for you to be my maid. So, as First Corinthians is taking the bus home one day, a man starts watching her. And the next day she takes the bus home, he's still watching her. And one day he drops a letter in the seat beside her. And the poetry is actually pretty beautiful to me. Do you remember it?
Friendship is an outstretched hand, a smile of warm devotion. I offer both to you this day with all the heart's emotion.
I thought it was cute.
It is.
So thank you for reading that, for finding it and reading it. So she learns that the man's name is Porter. That's right, y'all. The same Porter that had urinated out of a window when her dad went to collect the rent. But she don't know about that. Also, yeah, he's a 7-day vigilante. She don't know that either. So they began seeing each other like teenagers, out of the gaze of her family, out of their eyesight, especially her father. He explains to her, though, Porter does, that he wants a woman, not a doll, too afraid to speak up to her father. He wants someone strong. They're in their 40s. Come on. So Corinthians tries to think of any woman she knows who's not a doll, who seems like a real woman. Not her mother, not her mother's friends. They all kind of seem like dolls. So she tells Porter, oh, you want a woman? Any of the women on the bus, you want one of them? You could write one of them a little cliche card, but none of them could read it. So she gets out of the car and tries to slam the door. But looking at that house with her fanny, she runs right back to her and right back to the open arms of Porter and to his apartment room. Milkman and Macon are arguing in the kitchen when Corinthians returns home very early in the morning. She doesn't want to hear what they're saying because she doesn't want to, forget about Porter. So she goes to bed. Back downstairs, they are arguing because Pilot had to get Milkman out of jail. The cops had him and Guitar over as they were carrying a bag of what turned out to be human bones, not gold. It made Macon sick knowing he had to rely on his sister to get his son out of jail. She told the officers a contrived story about how she carried her dead husband's bones in a bag because she couldn't afford to bury him properly, and they gave the bones back to her. Those are actually the bones that of the body that she got from the cave.
Right.
So,
is this? I think this is it, because she went back to the cave to get the bones.
So they were there when Macon first went into the cave, but the gold was gone.
Right.
Okay, but the body was still there. Yeah. And then she went back and got the body.
Got the bones.
The bones. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so Milkman learns that Porter is the man his sister's been secretly seeing, and he sees Porter exchange like this handshake with Guitar, so he knows that Porter too is part of this 7-day vigilante group, and so he tells his father. Soon, Magdalena invites Milkman to her room. Magdalene's his sister. She's like, come on up to my room. I got to tell you something.
Come here.
And she shows him a tree in the backyard. She tells him how the tree got there. We didn't go over this, but they used to take these car rides through the city so everyone could see them in a nice car. And one day they were doing this, and the little boy, Milkman, had to pee. And Lena was the only one who would take him.
Right.
He got startled and peed on her while she had like these beautiful branches in her hand. Well, she planted one of them and it grew into a tree. And so in her heart, it made what her brother did to her as a child okay. Because in truth, everything they did in that house was the women did around the men who lived there. They walked softly because Macon was an angry man. They cooked for a milkman. They, spoke softly if he was taking a nap. Everything was about him, and he couldn't care less about them. And that culminated into the fact that he peed on her when she was a girl. But the fact that this tree existed helped her to forgive him. But the tree was dying. And so was forgiveness.
Oops.
She was letting him know, I might kill you. I've tried before. I've left soap in the bathtub.
She did.
But you never fell and broke your neck. But this last slight, having her sister's love taken away from her, is too much to bear. And so Magdalene might genuinely kill her brother. And she just wants him to know, because that's what a loving sister does.
Well, you got to let him know.
She's not going to allow this behavior forever. Milkman's like, wow, I really do have to get out of here. So he decides, I'm going to go find the gold myself. Maybe it's still in that cave. Now I'm going to speed up this last part, this final part, this trek to find himself. He goes from the north to the south, the land his father was born in, and looks for that gold. By himself, without his dad, and without guitar. He falls in love, though, with his father's story as he repeats it to people looking for this cave. He falls in love with the fact that his father worked so hard to get this property, and kind of sees his whole story now, Macon's whole story. This was a man that loved his parents, that were cared for by his father, and to have his father taken away from him. But then to work hard and to own property in the north and to make something of yourself. There was good qualities in his dad, and he started to miss his family. So, not finding the gold in the cave, he decides that, you know what, maybe Pilate still has it. And so he starts making his way back north from the south. He buys a car because he's got the money, and he's having car problems. So he stops and he tells a man, maybe I'll just buy another car. It's a man in a soda shop.
Right.
And so the man gives him a soda, and he's like, what you gonna do about the car? You need us to look at it? There are other men in the bar. Right. And Milkman's like, nah, maybe I'll just buy another car. And this is insulting to them because, one, he's talking about how easily he can buy another car, and because he's kind of downplaying their ability to help him fix it. So one of them tries to kill him. One of the younger men decides he needs to die. So, in this part of the book, we see that Milkman is on the edge of death very often. After he survives that, the old men in the bar are like, why don't you come hunting with us? And for some reason, he goes.
Why?
Do you know why he went?
Why would you go?
So I think he was ashamed because he wanted to show them that he wasn't scared of them. And then he was having car problems, so there's nowhere he could really go anyway.
Pride. That's pride.
It's pride, yes.
Say, why don't y'all just fix my car and I'll go home? I'd love for you to do that. That's what I would have said.
But he didn't mean anything by saying he could buy another car. It was just an option for him, and he was saying it out loud. So anyway, yeah. So, while he's hunting, he gets separated from the older men, the posse, and he hears something in his ear. It's a voice, and it's telling him, oh, no. Sorry, backing up. So the soda pop man said there was someone here looking for you.
Yeah, I'm like, maybe she's getting to that. I'll just hold on there. Okay.
This is before he almost died at the hands of the young man. So the soda pop man's like, I knew by the description that it was you he was looking for. And Milkman's like, oh, okay, what did he say? He left a message saying something like, this is your day or something. Wish it was my day. And Milkman's blood goes cold. This is my day. Milkman's heart stops. But why should he fear Guitar? He and Guitar are friends. He's Guitar's confidant. So he goes hunting with these older gentlemen, and he hears again, this is your day. Something like that. Or your day has come.
Your day has come. Yeah.
And it's guitar trying to take a wire and cut his neck. But he breaks the cut with his fingers, fights guitar off, and runs, and shoots his gun, right? But doesn't kill guitar. When he catches back up with the omen, they like, what you shoot your gun for? And he goes, I was scared. And they go, he's scared of the dark. He's like, I show it.
Right.
I'm scared a lot these days. Back
he
home.
Got reason to be.
Right. Back home, Hagar dies. How does Hagar die again?
I couldn't figure that out. I don't know how she died.
Oh,
I just know she was dead.
I actually forgot how Hagar dies. But
did she kill herself?
Maybe. That's
what I was thinking. It was suicide.
Oh, okay. Well, at the funeral, Hagar's mom, Reba, and her grandmother, Pilot, are singing and letting everyone who can hear them know that she was loved. This baby girl was loved dearly. Milkman returns home with the history he's collected by visiting the South. Pilot knocks him out because she blames him for Hagar's death. He convinces her not to kill him, but instead lets her know that those bones she's been carrying around really are her father's bones. Right. Because when those men shot her father into the sky, they also threw him in like a body of water. He floated to the top, and then they threw his body in a cave. And it just so happened that that was the cave that those two children, her and her brother, were taking cover in that day. So those bones that you out of respect have been carrying around, those are your father's. Let's go bury him. And so they go to bury him back in the South, right?
Right.
And then as that's complete, Hagar gets shot in the neck. By who, you say? Guitar. Yeah. That bullet was aimed at Milkman. So Pilot dies.
Pilot gets shot in the neck.
What did I say?
Hagar.
Sorry, Hagar been dead. Pilot gets shot in the neck by guitar. That bullet was meant for Milkman. You want my life? You need it? Here it is, Milkman tells him. If you surrender to the air, he thinks, you can ride it.
Ooh.
And that's how the book ends, you guys. Let's take another break, shall we?
Yes, please.
So Alexis, this book is a lot. I don't know how we would have fit in the theme of the week. What did you think of Song of Solomon by Toni Morrison, and would you recommend it?
There was so much going on. This is one that we need to add.
It's heavy.
That I need to add to the reread list down the line as I have some time to think about it, because it's just so much going on. And I'm not sure all the time what's happening. All I could keep a track of was dates and numbers. That's it. That's all I could keep track of, because I don't know what's going on in the book. And I listened to it, and as you learned, I found out that it was an abridged version that I had listened to, so I had to actually go back and read the book. So,
did you finish reading it too?
Yeah.
So what were the difference in the abridged version that you listened to and the full book that you read? I thought that was so interesting.
So some of the conversations are cut out because I guess it's not necessarily needed to tell the full story. So like in the beginning, that's when I realized that it wasn't the same. And I'm like, wait, I got to go back and read all of that. Why is this happening? But anyway, so some of the conversations and maybe the descriptive things, like if you're describing an area or the place something happened, that wouldn't be included.
That
and they
surprises
use those versions in schools, they said.
Oh, I hate that, because that's Toni's writing. She put everything in there for a reason, and so much of this book is dialogue, so I couldn't imagine this story told without that essential dialogue. No character in here is just filler. It all comes back full circle. Stuff right. I thought I could just toss away, like Porter hanging out his window drunk. That was actually crucial to who Guitar
Right.
later becomes. So
The
what do you
7
think this book
days.
was about?
So, if I had to think about it, I do have to think about it. So, what I'm thinking is that it surely was this flying and being free, and, ultimately, what's his name? Milkman's freedom and kind of finding himself and what he needs to do in life. That's kind of what that's kind of what I've come to. But again, I feel like I have to read it again because there's so much in there and the stories are interesting and you care about the characters. And I always wanted to hear more about the sisters, but
Yeah.
they were so much older than him. So we weren't focused on the sisters. But then when we had that little piece where they talked about him when she peed on him the car ride and
He
then
peed on her.
he
Mhm.
peed on her the car ride. Yeah, that I got to know them a little better, but I just feel like I need to read it again for some more information and understanding about what happened in the book. But like you said, it's no character, um, they were all essential part of the story. And so
Mhm.
that kind of kept me engaged because I wanted to know what happened to them, especially Pilot, especially Hagar, because I don't know. I really don't know. I thought she killed herself, but I'm not completely sure. I have to go back and reread that.
Yeah,
So it
I've
was
actually
interesting.
forgotten. Mhm.
So what about you? I mean, I enjoyed it. I would definitely read it again because it's a lot of stuff that's going on in people's heads that's not really happening.
Yeah.
I saw that a couple of times. Like, that's not actually happening. She didn't see that. That didn't happen. But
Mhm.
that's what she's feeling like has occurred.
Mhm. So for me, this book is very much about life and living and what that means. How can you live if you don't know who you are? To go your 20 years of your life thinking your mother is a perverse woman because you didn't bother looking at her as a human to ask her her story.
He didn't like his mother, he said. He didn't have love for her.
So before his dad told him that about his mom, he loved her as much as he could love a woman. He didn't
As
have
much
any
as he could love a
interest in
woman.
her.
No.
And there are, to me, certain symbolisms in this book.
I
Men,
wouldn't
you're
say he was a mama's boy by any stretch of the imagination.
so there are a couple of scenes where men are urinating on women, whether it
Yeah.
be the little boy who accidentally peed on his sister or Porter hanging out of the window. There's some sexual gender. There's like a gender battle here where the women are stifled or ignored or paraded and then shamed. That's actually what Lena says her father has done to her entire life, paraded
Yes.
and shamed her.
Right.
Um, so that's an interesting conversation there about how can you live fully when you are hindered by this like dark cloud over you, which are the men in your life. Even the grandma that comes to Macon's office and is like, what good is it going to do you to kick me and my family out?
Right.
She was collateral to him, to his growth, to his status. That's all he cared about. And no one in this book could really live until they knew who they were and bit down into that. So Milkman goes to the South to find who he is. He thinks he's going for this gold, but maybe the gold was knowledge of like his people and where his people came from. I mean, it's a lot.
It
It's
is
a
a
lot.
lot. But
So
you've read this multiple times, right?
well, I was a little girl when I read this book,
Oh.
and this is only my second time reading it.
So
So
now you're reading it as an adult.
yeah, and I wasn't. There are some. Pilot is very much into spiritism, and though it doesn't go deeply into her practices, she is a very like bohemian type of um, person. So there were some things I didn't like about what she thought her dad told her from beyond the grave. I didn't like that. It gave me the heebies and the jeebies. I didn't like it. And
Oh.
even though she wasn't clear on her thinking. I didn't like that part at all.
Mhm.
And then in addition to that, or I should say, aside from that, I just felt like Toni's language about the world. This is something that came up in Sula too. She describes the world you're reading so well, where you feel like you're there. And the thoughts
You
of the
do.
children, she even describes with accuracy for, a little black or brown girl or boy. You might read some of her dialogue like, yeah, that feels like something that people would say. She's got a great way of writing conversations, which is why I don't know how an abridged version could take out the conversations. They're so great. And then Guitar was doing these killings of white people because he felt like they had taken something unnaturally from him, Negro lives. But then when he thought that Milkman was taking something that should have belonged to him, this gold, then Milkman's life became negligible,
And that's what he said. That's what he told him. That's
And
what he
Milkman was
told
like,
him.
well, why did you warn me that you was going to come kill me? He's like, because I'm your friend, because I love you. My man, thanks. Yeah, so yeah, there's a lot going on in this book. This is probably one of I would say the best novels I've ever read. The way she develops characters and worlds, just awe-inspiring to me. Yeah, Toni is amazing. And I'm talking in circles because I really don't know where to put my finger on this book. It's a lot. It's heavy.
Is.
And it just
is.
happens to you. You're reading it and the story just happens to you. It is a page turner too, because every sub story you have to pay attention to and you want to know how it's going to end. But the book never really ends.
No, the way that ends, I'm like, wait, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's it. So it's about freedom. What is it about? What? Find your family. What? I don't know what this book is about. I don't.
It's about a lot of things.
I don't.
And that's okay. So I don't know if I'd recommend it, but I'll say I thoroughly enjoyed reading Song of Solomon. Some parts more than others, and I love how Toni's books just completely swallow you in the story, and then you come on the other side like, wait, what?
Okay. Well,
and days later you like, oh my goodness, and then years later you like, ooh. So yeah.
Well, thank you for saying that, because I'm telling you, I was just like, what just happened here?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is this story over? Is there a part 2?
Yeah.
It's not. I'm just left here with this.
But everyone wants to be free and they want to live, even if it's for that brief moment when they're flying. Milkman gets so depressed when he learns that people can't fly like birds do. Right. And then the insurance man takes a flight by jumping off of the house. And then at the end, when Milkman decides to let Guitar, whatever happened, he decides that, if you surrender to the air, you can ride it, which is flying. So why run from people?
Yep. It
let life happen to you.
But kind of like that's what he did. Like when he kind of was like, come on, if you're going to kill me, Hagar, come and kill me.
Yeah.
Because I'm just.
But he never thought Hagar was going to kill him.
Right.
Guitar is going to kill him.
Your friend.
Guitar is a murderer, so he going to kill you.
And he explained that to him, but you could just switch this anytime you want to. Yeah. Oh no, I'm not a murderer.
Because that's unnatural.
I don't do that.
Right.
But he like the way the story reads, he like Guitar felt like that was owed to him. Like, how dare you leave me out of that? But he like, well, man, it wasn't no gold anyway. What are you talking about? But he had his mind set on something. And the way that I found out about Ruth's story, that immediately came back to me like, oh, okay, that's what it is. He was so disgusted by the idea that her father birthed his grandchildren, that he just knew it was a horrible, something.
And the investment money his father-in-law wouldn't give him.
And I didn't really consider that at all. I just considered the fact that he felt like that was the most disgusting thing.
And the fact that he didn't have domination over his wife when it came to her father, that she was going to let her. So,
that's true.
You know, he felt like that was owed to him.
Right.
So yeah, that's similar to Guitar feeling like this gold that didn't actually existed and was being stolen from him because he already had these thoughts in his mind about Milkman.
Yeah.
So why not let this be true too? Yeah,
I mean, just like he was like, why didn't you just follow the package? Because you could just follow it and see that there's nothing in it. I was just helping the man at the store. It's just,
and the futility in all of their actions, even the fact that Macon was born dead and that his name was Macon Dead, and all his children were born as deads.
What are we reading next week, Kari?
Stamped: Racism, Anti-Racism, and You, by Ibram X. Kendi and Jason Reynolds.
That is the book we will be digesting next week, folks. So thank you for listening to Lit Society. We'll be here next Thursday. Join us. Lit Society is brought to you by Alexis Honoria and Kari Herrera.
That's me.
Support the cause by leaving a 5-star review for our show on Apple Podcasts, along with a comment about why you absolutely love us. We love you.
We love you guys.
If you've enjoyed what you just heard, tell a friend about Lit Society. Visit litsocietypod.com for show notes, this month's book list, and to sign up for our amazing email newsletter. And until next time, readers, read something.